Hi, my name is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I'm on the National Board of the Theosophical Order of Service. Today, we have another special guest, one of our Theosophists, and she is running unopposed for the position of Vice President of the Theosophical Society of America this year. I'd like to welcome Rozi Ulics. Rozi, welcome.
Thank you, Anne. It's good to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, I just want to get started with the very beginning. Where were you born?
So I was born in a little rural town in northeastern Ohio called Manaway. And the interesting thing about, that part of Ohio is there are a lot of immigrants that settled there in the 20th century, especially. And my father actually immigrated to the U.S. In the 50s. So he settled there, and there's a big Hungarian community. So I grew up with one foot in this Hungarian community where, we would hear people speaking Hungarian, we would eat Hungarian food, we would go to Hungarian events. And then I had this other foot in sort of the American culture. So kind of straddling both.
Interesting, very interesting. So was your mother Hungarian as well?
Mm-hmm. So my mother was Hungarian. She spoke Hungarian fluently, but she was actually born here. She was born in the States.
I see.
And her mother, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was also born here, but she was taught Hungarian. So my maternal grandmother spoke Hungarian. She taught it to her daughter, and that's how my mother met my father, and they just sort of clicked. That Hungarian, that shared Hungarian background.
So do you speak Hungarian?
The irony, when I said that I had a foot in both communities, I never really felt like I fully belonged to either. And part of that is because growing up, we did learn some Hungarian, but not formally. We learned it from hearing it spoken around us, but my mother didn't teach it to us, and that was her job, according to my dad. And then she passed away when we were quite small. And I often think that one of the reasons she never really wanted us to learn it formally was because I think that she was a bit concerned that my father would end up sending us back to Hungary to grow up with his own family. And I think she sort of wanted to sort of keep that from happening. So in a nutshell, I can speak some Hungarian, but it's what I call baby Hungarian, really.
Right, just a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Well, now you grew up in Ohio, and where do you live now?
So I live now in Alexandria, Virginia. It's outside of Washington, D.C.
And you go to the D.C. Lodge?
I do, yes. I'm a member of the D.C. Lodge, which is a very, very active lodge here.
It really was. Well, so you were raised, some of the time at least, in a Hungarian family. Your mother passed away, but were you raised in any religion?
Yes, our family is Roman Catholic. We were, raised in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school, was baptized, confirmed, went to Mass every Sunday. And in fact, after she passed away, my maternal grandmother, it turned out that she had actually been a cloistered nun, and she had been in this this convent, ended up having a breakdown and had to leave, which was, you know, quite a big deal back in those days. And the story was told to us that when she left the convent, she actually traveled across the country to California, and she sort of broke my grandfather out of a monastery where he had actually joined as a cloistered monk. So they ended up getting together. So yeah, our family was very, very Catholic.
Religious tradition. Well, has that influenced your life, or did you feel like you had to escape it? Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? Some people call themselves recovering Catholics, but other people really just grew from that spot.
Well, you know, there are definitely positive elements to the Catholic religion, and I think the structure that it gave me growing up was definitely needed in my life. But at the same time, you know, because my mother passed away so early, I never felt like the church ever gave us very good reasons or explanations for life, to help us understand why certain things happen in life. And frankly, I really, I didn't enjoy going to church. You know, I found it terribly boring. I remember as a young girl going to mass and sort of looking over the pew, and one time seeing somebody with a TV guide, you know, reading out of the TV guide in the middle of mass. One time I saw somebody clipping their nails. And so for me, you know, it seemed almost as though we were really all just kind of going through the motions. And I never felt that anyone besides my maternal grandmother was really particularly devoted to the things that we were sort of hearing and doing in the church.
So that wasn't working for you. So how did your spiritual search begin? And tell us a little bit about that journey.
So, well, you know, it's interesting. So I had the Catholic religion on the one side, and then about a year after my mother passed away, my father, he hired a nanny, and then he ended up marrying her. So my stepmother came into our lives, and when she first came to us, she was actually very interested in like the occult, or what I would say, probably in theosophical terms, we would say like the popular occult. You know, she's very interested in phenomena. I remember she bought my sister for her first birthday with us. She bought my sister an Ouija board. And so we would go off and we would, you know, play with the Ouija board. And other things that I think as young children probably was a little bit too intense for us. So I had that experience. And then shortly after my father married her, she then became a born-again Christian and became very, very devoted to that. And she belonged to different churches. And on occasion, I would have to go with her to these churches. And of course, then, you know, instead of the 45-minute mass, you would sit there for 2 hours, and it was the hell and brimstone and, you know, everyone's going to hell kind of sermon. And it was really frightening for me. So I think all of that together kind of shut me down, at least for my childhood and my early adult years, as far as a spiritual search. Later on then in my life, when I, you know, had gone through like some very difficult experiences, I found that path again, and it led me to, you know, the society and theosophy. And that's when I felt like, you know, I've found something that finally gives me context for life and the problems of life.
So you were shut down because of the experiences you had in several church systems. Then you were flailing around or looking around maybe, and then you found Theosophy. Was there anything in between Theosophy and getting out of the church?
You know, years of just, trying to fit into society, as a young adult, just trying to survive in a world with, that's like really focused on being successful, getting a good job, finding a relationship, establishing a family. And really that world that we sort of establish in society where, bad things don't happen to people, people don't get sick, people don't die. And so, I really tried to fit into that kind of world for years. And then my brother got sick and he ended up passing away from a brain tumor. And that didn't fit into the world that I was trying to establish. Like, it was another one of those situations where I felt like nothing prepares us for this. Like, nothing gives us the context to understand when somebody who's young and has had, my brother had a very hard life. Somebody who's worked so hard has reached a point where things are finally going well, and then something like this can happen. And so I had to, that really, that burned me to the ground. That experience really brought me to my knees. And, I had to get professional help from a therapist who helped me work through those things. And then once I finally got to a space where the world made sense again, and, I could open myself up to spirituality and thinking about life in terms of there's something more out there. That there is a purpose to life. That's when I started reading spiritual books, and I finally found like the lodge, the DC Lodge. That was my first experience with the society. And for my very first meeting, I remember attending, and I sat there, and I don't remember what the topic was, but I was just so gratified by the idea that there's this organization that is so logically establishing this framework where here are these ideas about life, and here are these ideas that you can explore for yourself. You don't have to believe them. Take the wisdom that you can, and decide for yourself what you think. So that was really an amazing experience for me personally.
That's wonderful. I can almost feel that when you were talking about that. Yeah, that's great. Um, so are there any teachers that you've had spiritually that, and it could be through books, living teachers or teachers that, are, like I'm saying, through books that have impacted your life especially?
These are good questions, Anne. Are there, I have had teachers and guides throughout my entire life, honestly. Like, I feel as though I wouldn't have made it this far without teachers and people who have sort of given me a lifeline when I've needed it. And when I look back, I think that was a spiritual teacher, even if, it really wasn't in a seeming spiritual context. I would honestly say, though, even though it was, so I mentioned my stepmother, and I would have to say, as far as a spiritual teacher, she was probably the biggest teacher of my entire life. We were not close whatsoever. She was from my perspective as a little person, a very difficult person to live with. I was a little bit afraid of her, honestly. And she, there were, as I said, she was very involved in the sort of the occult, the popular occult, and she was very involved in this fundamentalist church. And when I look back on our time with her and her example, I think that I've learned more from like her as an example of how not to be in life. And I think that's one of the greatest teachings I've ever gotten. For example, like just something very minor, her entire life struggled with her weight. And I remember she was always on one diet or another. And it took so much out of her. And I remember learning like the idea that instead of using your willpower to try to sort of right the wrongs in your life, it always seemed to me like infinitely better just to use your willpower to establish good habits. Like whether it's, protect your health, or protect your relationships. She would, whatever relationship she was in, she always seemed to have this knack for bringing conflict in. So protecting your relationships, protecting your reputation, those things were always really important to me because I saw how much effort it took to like undo the damage once you had already done the damage. And it just seems to me like so much easier to use your willpower to just establish good practices and try to be a good person from the outset. I don't know if that made any sense, but
oh, absolutely. That's wonderful. I mean, very well said, Rozi. Very, very well said. Well, just stepping back a bit, and that is that you went to the DC Lodge. How did you actually find it? I mean, did you find a book for Theosophy and then look it up and see if there's anything? How did that progress? How did you even hear of it about Theosophy?
Well, the very first inkling I ever had of Theosophy was about half a year before I went to that first lodge meeting. I had been at a wedding in Cincinnati where I went to school. I had taken care of these young girls when I was in college, and I had gone back to Cincinnati to one of their weddings. And the following day, I was at a brunch at their home, and I was talking to one of the young cousins who had just graduated from college. And she told me that she had just written her thesis on an organization that had been established in the late 1800s and had brought esotericism to the West. And that it had been established by a woman and two men. And I remember that really struck me because I thought to myself, I've never heard of this organization before. But I didn't ask her what the name of the organization was. And so 6 months later, it was January, and I was kind of making my list of intentions for the year, my resolutions. And I wanted to join a group. I wanted to be involved in something other than just like reading on my own. So I made a list of groups like the Metaphysical Society here in DC. I think there were a list of various groups that were having meetings in January, and Theosophical Society, the DC Lodge, was one of those. And it happened to be the very first meeting that I attended. So I went to this Theosophical Lodge meeting. And as I said, it was, perfect fit from the beginning. But it wasn't until much later that I put two and two together and realized, oh, this was Blavatsky and William Quan Judge and Henry Steele Olcott that this young woman had written her dissertation about. It was kind of an amazing discovery at that moment when I realized, oh, how funny. So of course we know, Anne, none of this is accidental. None of us are here accidentally.
Right.
So that was just for me a little sign.
Yes, yes, and that's what we like. We need sometimes we need those signs
We
because
definitely do.
we feel like maybe we're not on track, and the universe says you're getting close. You're warmer. You're warmer. You're warmer.
Right. We belong together.
We do, and you know that part of the theosophical principles is that idea of service.
Hmm.
And the Theosophical Order of Service, which is sponsoring this interview, we're about service. And I know that the pandemic has shut down a lot of service, but I would like to hear first what you think service is, and if you've been involved in any service projects, or even in terms of theosophy or outside of theosophy, that you could share with us.
Yeah. Well, sir, I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you, Anne. I should have said this at the beginning, but what you're doing here is such a tremendous service, particularly for this society, because I think it's so beautiful how you're highlighting people who are really special and sort of making this available to others. So I just want to say thank you for your service in doing this, and for highlighting people like, Floyd Kettering and Kathy Gann, like, who are these like giants in my mind. They are role models for me. When I think of service, those are the people that really inspire me. So from my perspective, service to me seems like a very lofty term. In my own life, I like to think of it more in terms of, I'm not being of service. I'm to the best of my ability making myself useful. And to me, that's been, being involved in my lodge, like the DC Lodge, for example. We meet every week. We have a members meeting, a members study, and then we have a members a public meeting. So it is serving in that respect, being useful. And then also in the TOS, I have been for years sort of running the animal healing network, where, people who have an animal that's in need of healing energy can submit the names, and the name then comes to our group, and we will meditate for that animal for a period of time. And we've had really wonderful success with that.
So people that have animal healing can get in touch with you?
Absolutely, yes.
Or on the TOS site, I think they can go through that as well.
Yeah, because we have the healing for people, of course, that takes place, and then we have the animal healing as well, because we realize that animals are also sort of our family members, of course. People, when an animal is sick, it's so difficult, because you, as like the caregiver of the animal, sometimes you're not really sure what you can do for them. So this is just an avenue to submit the name, have healing energy, and then feel a little bit of support as the caregiver of this animal, that you're doing the best that you can, and you're not alone.
Yes, universal brotherhood, universal humanhood, universal sisterhood includes everything.
Absolutely. Everything. Universal familyhood, absolutely.
Yeah, universal family, not just people, not just people.
Right.
Yeah, it takes a lot, maybe we ought to have a tree network to pray for the trees, or the air, and just
absolutely
have something for all of the different kingdoms, animal, mineral kingdom.
I was just going to say, we're going to have to establish a TOS plant network. I've got a couple of plants here that could probably use that.
Yes, it's like my fern is just really looking
what sad. Do I do?
Sad. What do I do? They're depressed, and they may be.
They have Devas too. They have Devas too, Anne.
Yes. So moving into back to Theosophy, and that is, are there any particular principles of Theosophy or things that you've learned that have influenced or guided your life? I know that you kind of mentioned that before, but we'll just go back and maybe fine tune that a little.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the idea, we've got this context for the metaphysics of it all. Like, where do we all come from? Where are we from? Like, where do I, as a human being, where did I come from? You know, what is my role in this universe? What's my purpose here on this planet? What is the correct relationship that I should have with my fellow beings? The Theosophy sort of gives us that framework, the context to understand who we are. That has been really so important for me. The idea that we can work on ourselves, we can improve ourselves, and whatever positive we do in this life will carry over then into future lifetimes. That we just don't die and then go to heaven or hell, right? That we can come back and we can continue to work and make ourselves even more useful. And that universal familyhood, I love that. You know, that is not how I grew up. I grew up really in sort of a every man for himself kind of worldview. You know, that's in my family. We really felt like, you know, you're kind of on your own. You're responsible for yourself. Don't rock the boat. Don't bring misfortune to the family. But at the same time, you know, be careful because you can't rely on others outside of the family either. So, and you can't afford to give of yourself because there's only so much to go around. So it's every man for himself. And that's a harsh worldview to kind of go through life with. And so opening up to this idea that, no, that's not how the world works. And everything is so much easier when you can see life as not a zero-sum game, but we're all in this together. And in a way, in my mind, I think of us all as Theosophists. Like some of us are just sort of in a very latent seed kind of stage, right? It might take a few more lifetimes before some of us realize like who we are and what we're meant to be. And then some of us are a little bit farther along, and our job is to kind of help the others move along and realize that we're all in this together.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to go back a bit, which just to ask you in terms of service, I know that you have served the Federation and you've had different roles, and I just wonder maybe if you could just tell us some of the things you've done within the Theosophical Society that in terms of service work.
Oh, right. So, well, in addition to, so I was president and served in a couple of roles in the DC Lodge. I also have been working with the Mid-South Federation almost since its reemergence back in 2000, I believe 11. So I started as their treasurer, and I've been working as their registrar off and on for years now when they have the annual conference. I've served on the board of the Theosophical Society, certainly. Just finished my first term. And what else? So Anne, I'm surprised you didn't mention. What were you going to say? Go on.
I was going to say, and facilitating the famous talent night at the Summer National Convention. Is that what you were going to say?
Yes, it's like we're mentally connected.
Yeah.
Yes, and then hosting Fun Night, of which you are such an integral part every single year, and couldn't do it without you. So yes,
I love it. That's my favorite part.
Hosting Fun Night.
And anybody that's listening, I just have to encourage you to go to the national conventions, which are starting up again in person, starting in this July. I hope we'll see you there.
Absolutely. And it is so critical. I have to say, I don't think appreciate the role that Fun Night plays. You know, you sit there at the Summer National Convention, there's all this cerebral thought form activity going on. Whoever established Fun Night understood like the esoteric purpose was I suppose, for us to come together and break up all of that and bring in different kinds of energy. So yeah, that's a really fun, terrifying experience, but fun.
It really is an integral part of our spirituality. And that is, I don't believe that spirituality needs to be somber. I think that my motto is that I am sincere but not serious. And
Yes.
I don't need any more intellectual information. I'm trying to get rid of a lot of that. And I need to be fed, not have things stuffed, more things stuffed into my mind.
So true. Yes. So
Yeah.
true.
It doesn't mean that there's not some information that's enlightening and that's powerful and that helps us in contemplating who we are and establishing ourselves in the world. Certainly information can give us insight and inspiration, but sometimes it does get a little bit too far.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm with you, sister.
With the brain, with the brain. I wonder if you could tell what role maybe attending lodge meetings and maybe going to federation meetings has that deepened your experience of theosophy? What roles have they played in your life?
Well, when you attend a lodge, it doesn't even really matter how much you participate. I think some people may go and they may feel like, well, a lot of this goes over my head, or I may not be interested in this particular topic on this particular day. But I think just by bringing our presence, we are providing a service for the others who are there. I think that's so important. So that's one aspect of it. And I think there's also this, we're Theosophists. We study Theosophy. And we all know that there is, even though we're non-dogmatic, there are some core principles that it really helps to have people who do some of the deep study and really get it there to kind of help to guide the conversation and keep us on the right track. And then also help us to, if you have somebody who comes into the lodge or the federation meeting who maybe is not quite on the same wavelength, but means well, it's kind of providing that bridge for that person, knowing how to sort of harmonize their energies with the group so that they can fit in and feel like, okay, I can, I don't feel like an outsider in this particular group. I can at least come and feel as though I'm being respected and my ideas are respected.
So we can act as a gracious host or hostess when we have newcomers and welcome everyone, make them feel welcome just as if we were welcoming somebody into our home.
It's so critical, Anne. Absolutely. It really matters.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. And I see that as one of my particular missions too, wherever I am, to try to make people feel at home, because I think everyone knows what it feels like to not feel welcome, to not feel like the part of the group, to not feel as if we belong. And so we're heart menders. We mend hearts as well as provide information and structure for living.
Right. And a bit of levity.
Yes, and mend the hearts of animals and people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you are so good at that, Anne. Like your personality is just, it's like you give the way that you are at the Federation or at the Summer National Convention, it gives other people like permission to be a little bit more of themselves. You bring that quirky energy in sometimes. And I think that's so valuable because it helps people feel like, oh, I can be free to be who I am. I don't have to, always be serious. I don't always have to use big words. I can still fit in amongst this group of people who are very well-meaning people.
That is not by accident. And when I say that, it's not that I consciously choose to do that. But as I develop my own spiritual path, what I noticed is that I would, I think all of us probably ask that we be used in a certain way. And I found that I was being used more and more for humor, even though I had a lot of information and did a lot of meditating and did those kinds of things. Even one time I was giving a speech and someone had read one of my books and they said, even though she's really funny, she's very deep too. You know, but I remember going to a meeting and I said, well, how do I represent myself? And my spiritual voice said, as the ambassador of joy. And I'm going, really? Okay, well, evidently this is a role that I have in life. And it's spontaneous, you know, it works through me. So
I love that, ambassador of joy. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
And isn't that what empathy is? And it is like tuning yourself to what other people need in the moment, right?
Yes, and yeah, you know, there's that conscious effort of doing that. And then I find that the more I meditate, the more that I practice, the more that I use the principles, then the personality begins to abate and something different begins to move us into those actions without forethought. And so we're just naturally present,
Absolutely.
naturally spontaneous, naturally happy. I
Yes.
just was doing a video this morning, a 20-minute exercise video, and the woman, I was looking at it and we were both kind of not smiling, and she smiled brightly, and all of a sudden my mood changed and I was right there doing the exercises. It was such a difference, just this tiny thing, the smile that she did in this video. It wasn't even a human,
Yes.
you know, she wasn't even in the room with me.
It's magic.
It is.
It's these principles. You see these principles in day-to-day life too.
Yes, they light us up. They light us up. Well, HPB, she recommends, or she says that altruism is theosophy. What would you say about that? Do you think that is true? Or theosophy is altruism, both ways? I mean, that's an interesting thing.
I suppose it is, because really, if the biggest thing about theosophy is that this unity of all life. And I think sometimes we trip over ourselves, right? Because I think maybe others don't. Maybe this is just me, but you know, sometimes it's hard to get along with other people. It's hard to feel empathy with somebody that you disagree with, or that you know, might have some conflict with. That's hard. And sometimes we're a little bit hard on ourselves, thinking, well, I try so hard to be a good theosophist and I can't even get along with my coworker, right? I just, no matter how hard I try, this person just won't let me love them. But it's like you said, that altruism, it's tapping into something that is already there. And, you know, you have to practice it, like certainly through meditation and so forth. But that's what it's all about. That's what theosophy is about. It's like tapping into that thing that is there, that hidden love, you know, Annie Besant, oh, hidden life, oh, hidden light, oh, hidden love. It's there. It's tapping into it. And it's learning, like you said, to sort of tap in and channel it to other people. That's theosophy. I feel like that's something that HPB was kind of pointing towards. We each will do it in our own different ways. You know, you and I might be doing it through humor. Other people might do it in other ways. But I feel like that's kind of, it's not that complicated. I think that's maybe what she was saying.
Yeah, others might give compassion or gentleness when needed. And hopefully we're flexible enough to be able to incorporate all these principles in our lives, whether they be compassion, love, peace, understanding. So
that's why the whole idea of the diversity is so important, right? The unity and diversity. You need us all. You need all types of people to come together, because we each have our own little talent. And only all together with all of our little talents can we really get it right, I think.
And then getting it right really means forming a universal brotherhood, sisterhood. I like to change that up and always add, and humanhood and animalhood. Would you call it a universal what?
I think of it as like a familyhood, universal familyhood.
I love that. That includes everything, the earth as well, and the animals and the humans as well. Universal familyhood. Yay, I love it. I love it. Well, changing now from maybe the more inspirational to the more functional, and that is, have you ever been to any of the camps, the theist camps? And
I have,
was
yeah.
that a valuable experience, and where have you been?
Yeah, so I have been to, I love Pumpkin Hollow up in Prairieville, New York. Magical place. I encourage everyone to go visit. It is magical. It is the third object personified. You will go there. It's gorgeous. It looks a little like where I grew up, actually, in Ohio, but it's gorgeous. It is filled with Davic energy, and we talk about service. The service of the people who live there and keep that place running is so inspiring. And I think about them because they have a morning meditation every day where they send out energy to the rest of us in the society. And to me, that always makes me feel a little better. Like, thank you, Pumpkin Hollowers, for doing that for us. I've been also to Crotona in Ojai, California, many times, and also a very, very powerful place. And I was just there at the end of January. I always come back from Crotona feeling centered and like this inner impulse, like my inner impulse is strengthened to just, keep on going and, keep doing whatever it is that's in front of me that can make me useful to the society. I've been to Adyar also, which was also an amazing experience. So that's a little farther afield, but I highly, if anyone has the opportunity, I highly encourage a visit to Adyar as well.
For those who might not know, that's the international headquarters
Yes.
in India.
In India, yes.
Yeah. Have you ever, again, we're going to switch topics again. Have you shared theosophical principles with someone that was really new to theosophy or someone that was outside of theosophy, friends or family? And if so, how do you think is the best way to go about sharing? So that's kind of a double edged question here, two sides to that question. How should we share theosophy?
That's such a good question. Because of my experience growing up in the Catholic Church and then, with my stepmother's fundamentalist church, I am so careful with how I present anything theosophical to others, because I never want to be perceived as trying to recruit people or trying to convince people of anything. But I'm always trying to embody the theosophical ideas and trying to share through just how I am. Like with my two sisters, they know that I am a member of the society. They know that I no longer eat meat or I try to avoid animal products, and neither of them have any interest in that, but through the years, just doing it and not at all trying to impose it on them or make them feel guilty about anything, slowly, I think they're coming around. My one sister now has been telling me, I don't feel like eating meat anymore. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I don't know if it's my influence, but it's more, I am always very careful, I would say. And it's more like a drip, drip. If I meet somebody that, I might meet for the first time, I really just talk about things in a very general way. Things using common language and just very positive, just always trying to be positive and try to emphasize life is not a zero-sum game in my experience, and things are always better when we work together, and just little things that helps them hopefully to feel more comfortable about me and where I'm coming from. And then from there, we'll see. So I don't know if that's a very good answer, but I think it's more.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great answer. Often when people get excited about something because they found a new way or new path or new information, they want to share it with everyone and kind of shout it to the rooftops. And probably with Theosophy, that may not be the best way to share. And I think that you've covered that quite well.
Right.
Do you have any particular theosophical books or authors that have influenced you, or even any other things, other books in the spiritual realm that have been very meaningful to you in your life?
I would say one of my most favorite theosophical authors is really Annie Besant, and Leadbeater also. I love Annie Besant. She is such an inspiration. I know that some people don't resonate with how she writes, but when I read Annie Besant, she does something to my heart. I feel the same way with Leadbeater. I think Leadbeater, his writings are more interesting, because a lot of his writings have to do with sort of the third object and, the human capabilities. But what I love about Leadbeater is the love that comes through. Everything I read from Leadbeater, you just feel this love. So that resonates with me. I appreciate how Taimani, I'm reading, for example, right now, Taimani's Yoga Sutras. I really appreciate his sort of scalpel-like surgical explanation of these spiritual ideas. That to me is really interesting. It appeals to my cerebral, thought process. I have to say one of my favorite, though, non-theosophical authors who I've never been able to find a satisfactory sort of categorization for him, but Hermann Hesse. He's written, many people might know him from I believe Siddhartha, which is not my favorite book, but he has several books that to me, he's writing about a very deep internal spiritual journey in each one of his books that whatever it is impacts me on a very deep level. So Hesse has been a big influence for me.
Thank you. Yes, I call those books, every one of them, you're saying they have really touched you in very meaningful ways. And I call those living books. The books are alive. And some books I can read and they're not alive. I just really want to put them down, but there are others that are living books, or maybe they're just living for me in the moment. But there is an aliveness that transports. You were talking about the love of Besant and Leadbeater. And of course, I'm a big Olcott fan, and that's what I find when I read him. And that is that I find that just the presence of love that really surrounds the entire experience of reading the book. And so
it's so inspirational. Yes. I love Olcott too. I love reading his old diary leaves. I mean, what's great is that you're kind of doing what Olcott did, right? He put down all of these early experiences that we can now look back to and kind of put ourselves in their place and be inspired by what they went through to establish the society. And now you are documenting the experiences of people who are working in the society now, and it just continues. So that's really, you are doing Colonel Olcott a great honor, I think, carrying forward his legacy.
So great. Well, he came to me, and that's how I really got involved with him. He came to me, and so I deeply appreciate it. Just through synchronicity. And I started reading about him, and he just became a real life person for me, just really alive. And I think that some people have said that, when he passes away, that he really still is with us. And I somewhat feel like that. These are walking legacies of energy and power and presence that surround us and live in us and through us as we continue the Theosophical Society.
That's really special. Yes, I feel that same way. I feel like they are still with us.
They are with us. I can I can almost feel it right now as we talk. It feels
Yeah,
wonderful. Well, I
I
want
feel like, oh, I
to.
was just going to say, I feel like HBB would be yelling at us right now and
Uh,
should be like berating us for our shortcomings. But I think secretly she would be proud of us too, you know?
we must hope so. We must hope so. She was quite a lady, quite an intense lady,
Hmm.
quite a controversial person, and she really lived out loud. That is for
Had a
sure.
good sense of humor.
She amazing woman. Even though Olcott holds the first place in my heart, we'll put her there as well. I just wonder if you have any closing words or anything that we didn't cover that you would like to say or mention. Advice.
Just, I think we have to, we live in a really hard world. And life seems really hard right now. There seems to be threats around every corner, and people are really struggling. So, I think as members of the society, first, I think I feel so grateful to have found the society, to have gotten my chance in this lifetime um, to do this work. And so I think the first thing is like we should always remind ourselves of that. Like, well, what an amazing opportunity this is for us, to do good, to try to um, lift up some of this gloom and doom wherever we may be. I think that I think we have to always monitor ourselves and try to do our best, but also take it easy on ourselves, lighten up a little bit, open our hearts to the extent that we can. And I think also we have to try to stick together. When we come together in groups, some of our little petty differences can rear their heads, and that's okay, because I think we're learning to work together for the future, for even greater things. But I think we need to really stick together, and I feel like if we can keep these things in mind, then we can do a really great service for this world, for our fellow humans, and really honor what those founders did in establishing the society for us in the very beginning. That's how I see things.
Thank you. I'm going to add a little to what you said when you said life is hard. Life is hard, but it's not hard all the time. And I think often we forget, and I think that's what you're leading to, and that is that we have the privilege to study Theosophy, which lightens our burdens, which makes it easier, and we can live full and wonderful life in the midst of what appears to be difficulty and suffering. And that doesn't deny that that exists. It just says that
Absolutely.
joy is in the midst of everything.
Absolutely.
And we can live that joy without denying the pain and difficulties around us.
You got it.
Yes. So I want to thank you again, Rozi, for being here with us today. Take care.
Thank you, Anne.